I fixed everything: printers, servers, broken code, broken teams. But when they replaced me with real professionals, everything fell apart. This is the story of how I walked away to become better, and how they later begged me to return, on my terms. 7 years ago I was 22, barely out of community college, no degree, no letters after my name, but I knew my way around a server room better than most people knew their own apartments. I'd been working in IT since high school, tinkering with machines, replacing motherboards in my buddy's basement, fixing printers my teachers gave up on, and when I got hired at this mid-sized logistics firm, it felt like I had landed in the perfect spot, not too corporate, not too chaotic, just enough structure to stay sane and enough broken systems to keep things interesting, and within 6 months I was the guy everyone came to, not officially, not on any org chart, but if someone's laptop crashed, or the printer on floor 3 jammed, or the security camera feed went dark, they called Jake, and I didn't mind. I liked it, I felt useful, necessary even, and for a long time that was enough, especially with Anna by my side, my girlfriend, now fiancée, who kept me grounded and believed in me more than I believed in myself. Together we were saving for a down payment, planning a small wedding without help from our families, and even though money was tight, we were happy. But then the company grew, like really grew, venture capital, expansion plans, new software, new departments, new faces everywhere, and that's when it started to shift. First they brought in a new CTO, then suddenly I wasn't alone in IT anymore. We had specialists, guys with polished resumes and loud opinions, and within a week I could tell things were off. They argued over systems I'd built from scratch, mocked tools that worked just fine, and one of them, Greg, called me a tech farmer behind my back, said I was stuck in the Stone Age because I didn't jump to whatever shiny new app he saw on Product Hunt, and at first I brushed it off, figured they'd need time to settle, that experience would win out eventually, but it didn't. Because they weren't just loud, they were connected, they knew how to play politics. How to laugh at the boss's jokes, how to nod at the right time in meetings, and when I raised a concern about a software suite Greg pushed through, one that I knew for a fact wouldn't integrate cleanly with our core logistics system, he cut me off mid-sentence and said, "That's because you don't understand enterprise architecture," and just like that, I felt myself being erased, one smirk, one shrug at a time. At first I kept trying to be the bigger person, chalked it up to ego clashes or new guy syndrome, kept my head down and just did the work, patched servers, tracked network issues, ran backups manually when the new automation scripts failed, which happened more than I'd like to admit, and I figured if I just kept delivering, someone would notice, that eventually the noise would fade and what mattered would speak for itself. But instead it got worse, more meetings I wasn't invited to, decisions being made about infrastructure without me in the room, systems implemented without testing, and then me being asked to fix them when things went sideways, and when I tried to flag it to the new IT director, a guy named Steven with a perfect LinkedIn smile and zero hands-on instincts, he didn't even look up from his tablet, just said, "We need to evolve, Jake. Don't take it personally," and I swear I could have laughed if it didn't sting so much, because I wasn't afraid of evolving, I just didn't believe in doing it recklessly, and meanwhile, back in reality, stuff was breaking. Printers were eating paper, security feeds dropped at random, departments couldn't access shared files because someone decided to change the folder structure midweek, and every time something failed, I was the one they blamed, even if I hadn't touched it, even if I'd warned them. Because I was still the familiar face, the one who used to keep things running, so obviously if it's not working now, it must be Jake's fault, and I'll never forget the day I walked into the break room and 2 people stopped talking the second they saw me, like I'd walked into someone else's house uninvited, and that's when I realized, I wasn't just being pushed out technically, I was being socially quarantined, and for what? For doing my job too well. For caring about how things actually ran instead of how they looked in a PowerPoint deck. I came home that night to Anna and tried to act like nothing was wrong, but she saw it on my face before I even said a word, and we sat there in silence for a bit before she reached over, took my hand, and said, "You don't have to prove anything to them. But you do owe it to yourself to do something about it." The next morning I walked into Steven's office with a list, actual documentation, itemized issues with the new systems, screenshots, error logs, compatibility reports, everything I could think of to show this wasn't just me being difficult or nostalgic for old tools, and I laid it all out on his desk, calm but direct, and said, "These systems aren't stable. If we keep stacking new software onto an outdated backbone, we're going to break something we can't fix," and he barely glanced at the papers before saying, "I'm not here to babysit legacy infrastructure," and I swear in that moment I knew, he'd already written me off, probably weeks ago, maybe the minute he stepped in, maybe the minute Greg started whispering in his ear, and what hit hardest wasn't the dismissal, it was the look. Like I was a guy clinging to a dying language in a room full of people speaking the new one, and after that I stopped trying to get through to him, stopped offering suggestions, and just focused on surviving the day without completely burning out, but the team dynamic was already poisoned. Greg and his crew blamed every glitch on my outdated methods, even when it was their code causing the problem, and more than once I caught them rerouting blame in front of management, casually, like it was just understood that I was the weakest link, and I tried to stay above it, but one afternoon I caught Greg installing an unauthorized build on a machine slated for the sales floor, and I asked, nicely, why he was doing it, and he just grinned and said, "Relax, farmer. I'm upgrading us to this century," and something in me snapped, not loud, not violent, just this cold drop in my gut, like I finally realized how far gone it all was, and that night I went home, told Anna everything, every last detail I'd been holding in, and she didn't say, "I told you so," didn't get angry, just listened, then pulled out the folder where we kept our savings plan and said, "We were saving for a house. What if we invest in you instead?" And when I looked at her, I realized she meant it, every word, and suddenly quitting didn't feel like giving up. It felt like choosing myself for once. I turned in my resignation the next morning, short, simple, polite, but I think the act of doing it rattled me more than the response, because Stephen barely reacted, just nodded and said, "Best of luck," like I was an intern heading off to grad school, not the guy who'd quietly held the whole department together for 3 years. And I walked out of the building with my backpack slung over one shoulder and this strange mix of dread and relief twisting in my chest, like I was free-falling without knowing if there was a net or not, and the moment I got home, Anna hugged me like I'd just come back from war, not a mediocre IT job, and we spent the rest of the evening planning, real plans, researching certification programs, reaching out to alumni, comparing online courses, and within a week I was enrolled in a year-long systems engineering program in another state, intensive, hands-on, with job placement support after graduation, and saying goodbye to Anna at the train station that first day. Felt like a movie scene I wasn't ready for, but she squeezed my hand and said, "You're going to come back stronger. Smarter. And finally with the title you deserve," and I held on to that, especially in the first few weeks when everything felt foreign and fast and I was surrounded by 20-year-olds who'd never touched a broken switchboard in their lives, and I had to remind myself constantly, I'm not behind, I'm just rebuilding from a better blueprint, and while I buried myself in coursework, problem sets, and late-night lab sessions, news from my old company started trickling in. Greg's project failed its first rollout, Stephen cut the old backup plan I built, which of course caused delays, and one of my old coworkers DM'd me to say, "Kinda crazy how they treated you, man. It's a mess over here," and for the first time in months, I didn't feel bitter. I just felt done. I had other things to focus on, like finishing this course and figuring out where the hell I was headed next. 3 months into the program I was knee-deep in networking layers and sysadmin scenarios when I got a call from an unknown number, ignored it, obviously, figured it was spam, but then the same number texted, "Hi Jake, this is Alan from HQ. Can we talk?" And my stomach dropped because Alan was the company's head of operations, someone I'd only interacted with maybe twice in person but knew was close to the top, so I called him back and he cut straight to it. Systems were failing, like, catastrophically, client dashboards going dark mid-demo, shipping schedules corrupting themselves, and internal ticket requests weren't even reaching the help desk anymore. And I kept waiting for the part where he asked for advice, but instead he asked where I was and if I could fly back for a few days to consult, and I didn't say yes right away, not out of spite but because I didn't want to jump into the same trap again, so I told him I'd only do it if they covered travel, paid me for my time, and didn't involve me in office politics, and to my surprise, he agreed instantly, wired half the money before I even booked a flight, And when I got off the plane and walked into that server room again, it was like déjà vu in the worst way: cables. A mess, diagnostics ignored, alerts piling up, and nobody knew how to fix it because apparently the specialists were either gone or busy blaming each other, and within the first 6 hours I traced the bottlenecks, mapped the overloads, and rolled back 3 critical modules that should have never gone live, and suddenly the dashboard lit up like it used to: stable, responsive, clean, and for a second, I just stood there and breathed. Not proud, just satisfied, like wiping smudges off a window. And seeing the world clearly again, and of course Steven came by, all fake smiles and, "Good to see you, Jake," and tried to convince me to stay, to rejoin the team, but I told him I was already on a team, mine, and he looked like he didn't get the joke, but I didn't explain it, just finished the job, submitted my report, and went back to school like nothing happened. About a week after I got back to school, I was sitting in the campus library finishing a network security lab when an email from Steven popped up in my inbox, subject line: "Let's reconnect," and for a second I just stared at it, not sure if I wanted to laugh or delete it without reading, but curiosity got the better of me, and I opened it to find 3 dense paragraphs of corporate damage control, full of phrases like "reevaluated value alignment," "collaboration culture improvements," and a sentence that made me audibly scoff: "We'd love to explore how your leadership could continue shaping the future of our IT division," which I guess was code for "we're in over our heads," and at the end was an offer to return full-time with a slight salary bump and the promise of greater integration in strategic discussions, which didn't even sound like English, and honestly, it pissed me off, not because they wanted me back, but because it was so sanitized, so vague, like they still didn't understand what they'd broken when they let me walk away, so I didn't respond, closed the tab, finished my lab, and figured that was that. But a few days later, I got a call from Alan, the same guy who'd brought me in to fix everything during the meltdown, and this time he skipped the niceties, said they were still running but barely, backups misfiring, logs corrupted, users complaining about phantom access issues, and the team that replaced me was underqualified and overwhelmed, his words, not mine. And then he said something that stuck with me: "We thought you were just the fix-it guy. Turns out you were the system," and I didn't say anything for a moment because honestly, it hit harder than I expected, and he must have felt it too because his tone softened and he added, "We need you, Jake. But I won't insult you by asking you to come back the way things were," and then he laid it out: part-time remote support while I finished school, full tuition reimbursement, flexible hours, and once I graduated, a permanent role, head of systems infrastructure, my own team, built from scratch, autonomy guaranteed, no interference from Steven, who, by the way, was being moved into a more externally facing role, which I assumed meant politely shown the door, and I told Alan I needed a day to think about it, even though my heart was already leaning toward yes, not out of revenge but because it finally felt like someone saw the whole picture, not just the mess I'd left, but the reason I left in the first place. And when I got home, I told Anna everything, every detail, and before I could even get to the offer part she said, "You're going back, aren't you?" And I nodded, and she smiled, not surprised, just proud, and then said, "Only if it still lets you finish what you started," and that sealed it for me, because this wasn't about returning to prove something, it was about doing it right this time, with backing, with boundaries, and with the kind of respect that doesn't need to be demanded, it's just there, baked into the offer. And the next morning I sent my reply: "Let's talk contract." Returning wasn't dramatic, no slow motion walk through the lobby or stunned silence from the team, just a quiet Monday morning, me in a hoodie with my laptop under my arm, nodding at the receptionist like I never left, but everything was different, not the building or the desks or even most of the faces, but me, because this time I wasn't here to belong, I was here to lead, and the first thing I did was audit the current stack. Painful, messy, and about as organized as a drawer full of loose wires, and it confirmed what I already knew: they'd been patching problems instead of fixing them, stacking plugins on outdated code, running reports through bloated middleware that didn't even sync right, and I could see the panic in some of the junior tech's faces when I asked questions, not because I was harsh but because they were used to pretending, to covering, and I wasn't mad at them, I was mad for them, because I'd been in that spot before, watching a system fail around me while the people above acted like it was your fault for not holding it together, and so I did the one thing no one expected. I taught, sat down with them, showed them how to do things right, not to make them feel small but to prove they didn't have to stay that way, and little by little, things started working again, not just the systems, but the people, and about 2 weeks in, Alan called me into a conference room to say that senior leadership was really happy with the progress, and asked if I'd consider formalizing the remote work setup even after graduation, and before I could answer, he added, "You've earned the right to build your role the way it works for you," and I just sat there for a second, processing that, because nobody had ever said anything like that to me before, not in this place, not in any place, and I told him I'd think about it, but in my gut I already knew the answer. Because for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was navigating someone else's version of success, I was designing my own. 2 years later I stood in the backyard of our first home, modest, but ours, watching Anna laugh with her little niece while music played low from a speaker near the porch, and I just let myself breathe it all in, the quiet, the space, the fact that this version of my life didn't feel borrowed or temporary, but real, earned, and entirely mine. And inside the house, in a corner office I'd set up myself, my degree hung on the wall. An actual diploma, not just a certification, and a laptop that connected me to a company that now ran smoother than ever, a team I built piece by piece, not by choosing the smartest resumes, but by teaching, mentoring, and choosing people who gave a damn, and the craziest part, I wasn't even working full-time anymore, 3 days a week remote, occasional in-person visits, and still, they treated me like a core part of the system, because I was, and when Alan stepped down 6 months ago and offered me the director role, I politely turned it down, said I liked building more than managing, and instead helped train the next guy, and I think that's what made it full circle for me, not the title or the money, though those helped, but the fact that I had the freedom to choose. And that someone trusted me enough to let me walk away from the top seat because they knew I'd still show up where it counted, and sometimes, when I look back, it's hard to believe how close I came to burning out for good, how small I let myself feel, just because someone with a louder voice said I wasn't enough. And if you're reading this and you're in that place now, feeling invisible, boxed in, stuck under someone else's idea of your value, I hope you find your exit, even if it's messy, even if it's scary, because on the other side of quitting is something no one tells you about, clarity, peace, and maybe, if you're lucky, the kind of life that doesn't need to be explained to anyone but yourself. Subscribe, hit the like button, and explore more fascinating stories.